Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to download historical stock or ETF data. So we're going to get the open, high, low, close volume directly from Yahoo Finance, and this will be done in a batch. We can also download this data using the QuantMop package, but in the method I'm going to be showing you guys today using the YFR package. We'll return all the stock data in a data frame, and we'll avoid re-downloading the data if it exists, which is a much faster way to get the data loaded up into RStudio. So we're going to require all these packages. The first thing we need is a symbols list or a vector of symbols that we want to request data for. So I'm going to be reading in a binary file with ETF data and extracting all the symbols. So as a reminder, in my previous video, I showed you how to get the ETF profiles. So I'm going to be using that binary file to request data for all of these symbols. Once you have that loaded up, we're going to save the current date, as I will be saving my data using the request date, and we're going to be using that date to set our to and from dates when requesting data. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be saving the final output as a binary file labeled as YFR ETF and then adding the current date that we pass in. So it's going to check whether or not that file exists. If it doesn't, then we get the okay to download the data. And then we're going to create a directory to store all of our cached files to avoid re-downloading the data if we request it again. I'm going to get data for all the ETFs for the past 3 years. We also have a parameter for a threshold on the bad data. So this function will first download the data for the SPX, and then it's going to compare the data for each of these tickers. And in order for this function to keep the data for our ETFs, it must have at least 50% of the data available. Otherwise, it's just going to skip over it. And I'm using 50% to skip over any ETFs that are no longer trading or any new ETFs that don't have that much data available. And then we need to set our location for our cache folder, and that's where all of the data will be stored temporarily. So here we see that for all of the ETFs we are able to get data for, it's going to save that into this ETF cache folder. So that next time, if we want to request data and it's already available, we don't re-download it from Yahoo Finance. Now, once you run that function, you'll get a printout of the progress out in the console. So for each of the symbols that you're requesting data for, you'll get something similar to this with the progress for each symbol and whether or not it keeps the data or it removes it. So it's going to do that for all the symbols that you pass in, and the final output, which is going to be saved in YFR stock, will be a data frame. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So we have the symbol, the date for the data, the open, high, low, close volume, the adjusted price. We also get the returns for both the adjusted and the closing prices, and the cumulative return on the adjusted close. Now that we have this data frame with all of our data, we can go ahead and save it. And you can also check which tickers were missed by running lines 25 and 26. So these lines are just going to compare our initial tickers that we set versus the ones that we got. So for me, it looks like I was able to skip over 1,000 different symbols that did not meet the 50% criteria. And as I mentioned, that's fine since I'm going to be doing some historical analysis on these ETFs and felt comfortable with using 50%, but you can go ahead and adjust that threshold if needed. And then finally, in line 28, we're going to save all of our data as a binary file using the date that you pass in. So as an example, here's the output of that, which is this very first line here. So for all the data dumps, it's going to be using YFR, ETF, and then the request date. Now, next time I want to use this data, I'm just going to be importing this binary file into RStudio. Well, with that, guys, this concludes the video. I hope this was useful information. I'll leave a link down in the description area to my Patreon where you can find the script. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.